Let's go straight across now to Nadair Hashemi with us on the broadcast for more on all of that. Let me begin by asking you for your reaction on that news just coming in, the Israeli Prime Minister's statement as far as the Iranian Supreme Leader is concerned. Now, according to him, assassinating Iran's Supreme Leader is not going to escalate the conflict, it's going to end the conflict. What do you make of that statement?
That's a very predictable statement coming from Benjamin Netanyahu, who naively and mistakenly believes, like many of his supporters in the West, that you can solve the very complicated problems of the Middle East by using raw military power. Israel has been assassinating its enemies from really the time that its state was created. There is a very long list of people that the state of Israel has assassinated, both Palestinians who have been secular nationalists and those who have been religious nationalists. The list is very long. Is Israel safer today because of this policy of targeted assassinations, or is it weaker today? So this rhetoric is, I think, unhelpful. I think it's deeply misguided, and it's very much expected. Let's not forget that Benjamin Netanyahu has an international arrest warrant out for him for his policies in Gaza. He is an indicted war criminal. So one would expect this type of hysterical rhetoric from someone who has that type of reputation among the international human rights community.
All right. I also want to get in your assessment of the statements coming in from the U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, in that warning to Iran, in a way, once again, he's talked about how the country should re-enter negotiations before it's too late. At this point, we've also been speaking to experts who said the only man who can actually end this conflict is the U.S. president. And now we have that latest statement coming in from the American leader, who earlier also said that sometimes countries need to fight it out before something can happen. I just want to get in your assessment of Trump's positioning right now.
I think Trump's statement confirms that he is in favor of this war. The fact that he's refusing to sign on to the G7 statement calling for de-escalation effectively means that he wants this war to continue. From the perspective of the U.S. foreign policy establishment, there's a lot of enthusiasm over what Israel is doing to Iran, because it's naively believed that Israel is redrawing the political map of the Middle East. And when this is all said and done, things will be better. I think, objectively speaking, it's the exact opposite. And Donald Trump is very much caught up in this framing. All of his advisors actually believe that good things can come out of this war with Iran. In terms of returning to negotiations, it's important to point out a basic fact that Iran and the United States were negotiating. In fact, the 6th round of negotiations over Iran's nuclear program were to have taken place yesterday. And it's precisely and exactly to scuttle the prospects of diplomacy that Benjamin Netanyahu launched this attack, which is why Israel has assassinated Iran's lead negotiator at the diplomatic talks in Oman, Ali Shamkhani. That's where we are with respect to the United States. In many ways, the United States is claiming that they haven't been directly involved in this war. I think the truth is very different. The United States is deeply implicated in this conflict. And the other point that I think it's important for your viewers to realize, since we're talking about the G7 world powers, most of them Western powers, it's pretty clear that these powers have learned absolutely nothing from the 2003 invasion and occupations of Iraq and Afghanistan. That brute military force in the Middle East, claiming that you can take away dictators and solve the problem and then hope that peace and stability will emerge in the aftermath, is a wishful thinking. Nothing has been learned from the Iraq war invasion. Absolutely nothing.
The way things stand right now, this conflict is headed in that escalatory tangent with each passing day. Looking at where things started out on Friday to where we stand right now. Let's also talk about the targets that have been chosen by Israel and what that tells us about what Israel is trying to do. In the latest, the state TV being targeted, and earlier, of course, the string of targets that have been chosen by Israel?
It's clear that Israel has a much broader list of targets that it's attacking, not just military installations, not just the senior leadership, but also economic targets, parts of Iran's civilian infrastructure. In 2006, when Israel went to war with Hezbollah, there was a term that was coined by the Israeli chief of Israel's top general called the Dah Doctrine. And that referred to a specific military doctrine that Israel had, where using intense bombing of civilian infrastructure, in this case in Lebanon, hitting these economic interests, these civilian installations and structures, that the enemy could then be forced to compromise on Israel's terms, that the population would then rise up and force a settlement. Israeli TV is now quoting that exact same doctrine used by Israel several times in Lebanon in the context of this current war with Iran. It's pretty clear that that's what Israel is pursuing. And because Israel is much more militarily powerful than Iran, it will be successful, I think, in doing that, because there's very little ability for Iran to, stop these types of attacks. And so it's a broad-based attempt to break the backbone of the Islamic Republic of Iran, not just the regime, but also those institutions that sustain life, which is why it's so devastating. And I think under international law, these types of attacks on civilian infrastructure are clearly violations of international law, clearly violations of the rules of war.
Where do you think where do you see things headed at this point? And is there any scope of diplomacy, according to you? Are you optimistic at all about that happening?
I see this dragging on for a long period of time because, as we just discussed, the one person who can stop this war, Donald Trump, is in favor of it. He believes that war is actually an instrument of diplomacy. He naively believes that this will actually force Iran to the bargaining table, and then the United States would be able to effectively impose its will on Iran at the bargaining table. I don't see that happening because that would effectively be humiliation for the Iranian regime. In the eyes of their own population, in the eyes of those segments of the Middle East that support Iran. So that's not really an option. So I see this dragging on for a very long time. Israel hitting Iran, Iran hitting back with its missiles on Israel, a lot of innocent civilians being killed on both sides, mostly on the Iranian side because Israel is more militarily powerful. And then the big question is whether the United States is going to get involved in this war. There's a lot of pressure on Donald Trump, specifically from his Republican Party, to come to the support of Israel, to take out Iran's nuclear program. And so that's something that he's weighing. And now, if Iran were to escalate and hit back at American assets in the region, then I think this will directly draw the United States into the war and things will get much uglier. So I don't see any light on the horizon. I don't see any room for optimism. And in many ways, I blame those European countries that claim to stand up for international law, that claim to stand up for a rules-based order, for effectively siding with Israel in this war. And so this is a very sad day for, obviously, the people of the Middle East, obviously for the people of Iran and Israel. But it's a sad day for those of us who believe in basic rules of an international system, rooted in the UN Charter, rooted in a sense that everyone has to play by the same rules. That rule-based order has effectively been torn up, not just by the behavior of Israel, but by its major backers in the West, in Europe, in Canada, in Australia, and especially in the United States of America.
Right. Let's also talk about the other side then. When we are talking about your comment on the pressure tactic that's being employed as far as putting pressure on Iran is concerned, but also what about the criticism that has come the way of Tehran about the lack of transparency when it comes to its nuclear program?
Yeah, I mean, those are legitimate questions. So Iran has to abide by the rules of the international system. Let's not forget that Iran is a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel is not. Iran does not have a nuclear weapon at this point. Israel has over 100. Iran has allowed its nuclear facilities to be inspected by the international community. Israel has not allowed that. And more importantly, let's not forget that under the administration of Barack Obama, a deal was worked out, not just between the United States and Iran, but between the international community and Iran. The entire world celebrated in 2015 when Iran and the United States, backed by the 5 permanent members of the Security Council and Germany, reached what was called, the Iran nuclear agreement. Iran was abiding by that agreement. Its nuclear program was under international inspection. The Iran nuclear deal was viewed as one of the most comprehensive and detailed nuclear arms controlled agreements ever negotiated in the history of arms control negotiations. Donald Trump, at the urging of Benjamin Netanyahu, tore up that agreement, ripped it up, thus forcing Iran, in order to get leverage and to have sanctions lifted, to slowly enrich its program, slowly to start its enrichment program as a way of advancing its own interests. So that's the background story. And so unless we acknowledge those points of departure, we can't have an objective understanding of Iran's nuclear program.
Right. Given that there is that lack of access, complete access to its nuclear program as well. We're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for joining us.